Hello everyone, welcome to the session. I welcome you all to this AWS demo class today. And as you all know, this is basically going to be kind of a first class that we have for AWS. So guys, let's go ahead and understand what will be the agenda of today's class. So guys, this is how, or this is the agenda that we are basically going to take into account and move forward. So first, we are basically going to understand what is cloud exactly, right? Why is it such a hype? What do people exactly mean when they say that they work on cloud, or they are looking for a job in cloud, or when they say that a certain company wants to shift their infrastructure onto cloud. So we're gonna basically understand what cloud is, and it's going to answer all these questions. After that, since cloud is basically a business, there are a lot of companies which adapt the cloud business, but there are various models using which you can adapt the cloud business, or there are various sectors, or there are various ways in which you can use cloud. So that we will be discussing in cloud models. And obviously, when we talk about AWS, when we talk about Azure or any other cloud provider for that matter, the principles of cloud remain the same. That is, whatever you understand about cloud, whatever you understand about cloud models, is going to be actually the same for both AWS and Azure, and even for other cloud providers as well, right? So we're gonna pick up AWS, and we're also gonna talk about why actually AWS is something which is preferred when somebody is new to cloud. Okay, we're going to discuss that. And finally, we are going to discuss the nitty-gritties or the technicalities of AWS. And also, I'm going to show you guys how you can launch your first server in AWS today in this class. Right. So, guys, this is the agenda for this session. All right, guys, let's start. So, let's start with the first topic, which is introduction to cloud computing. So, let's go ahead and understand what cloud is in the most simplest words possible. So guys, cloud is basically, forget about what you know about cloud, but cloud basically is the use of remote servers on the internet rather than using your own computer and servers. And these servers that you use on the internet are basically rented. So if I were to dial this definition down even more, I can say that cloud is nothing but use of rented systems which are available somewhere out of your premises, somewhere out of your company, right? Servers that are owned by someone else, but they connect it to the internet so that other people can use it, and they can basically take a rent from them based on how much amount of time they have used the server for. Okay, so in the simplest words possible, this is what is cloud. Let me take one more example. If let's say I require a system, I am a video editing guy, and I have an i5 system with 16 GB of RAM. Tomorrow, let's say I get shitloads of work, I get a lot of work, and now what I want to do is I want to basically render the videos fast. So how do I go ahead and do that? So if I have an i5 and a 16 GB system, it will probably take me somewhere about, if it's a 2 hour video, it will take me around 2 hours to render it. So in case I get a faster system, and I can basically go ahead and render the videos in half the time, right? So if I have 24 projects which I have to give in the next 12 hours, and all of them are for 1 hour, if I use my system, it's going to take me 24 hours. But if I use a system which is having a larger capacity, let's say an i7 or a 32 GB RAM or a 64 GB RAM for that matter, probably my project will get done faster. So what are the things that I could do in order to mitigate this particular scenario? Either I can buy a system, or I can ask help from a friend who probably will have this system, and tell him that, you know what, I need a system for just 1 day, bro, and I will put my videos out there, I will render them, and I can submit my project then. This is option number one for you. But let's say you don't have any other friends who probably have this kind of a machine. So the next option that you have is probably buy a computer which has this much amount of RAM and this much amount of CPU, and then get your project done with, and then you can, get over with your project. But the problem is that what will you do with this heavily invested system? So now that you guys already know that if you have to buy a high-end system or a high-end personal computer, I think it takes up a lot of money from you guys. I think it'll take around $1,500 to $2,000, or if I were to talk in rupees, it will take around of 1.5 lakhs to 2 lakh rupees in order to get a very high-end personal computer, right? But can everybody afford that? Can I afford that, given a person that I probably have 10 projects that I have to submit, right? But I'm not sure of the future whether I will get these monthly amount of projects even in the future as well. So let's say today I have a requirement wherein I have to get the videos rendered fast. Tomorrow it could be the requirements is not that much, and probably I could do with my i5 system only. I don't need an i7 system. So how did we tackle this problem? Now, this problem, which well, I took an example of an individual, but this problem was actually being faced by a lot of corporations, companies like Amazon, companies like, I can even say Facebook. So they were facing this problem wherein they were like, okay, so let's talk about Amazon. So Amazon does sales every year or every 2 or 3 months. Now, when they do sales, obviously at that point there is more traffic on the website than normally when they are not running any sale on their e-commerce platform, right? So when they have more traffic on their website, in that case they obviously need more servers. But what about the time when the traffic is not there? Then what will they do? What will they do with the remaining servers which are sitting idle now? So this was a problem which was being faced by a lot of companies, and they thought, why should we heavily invest in something if we are not going to get the output? Right? Why should I invest in buying 8 computers if it is only for 1 or 2 days that I'm going to need those 8 computers, and after 2 days I don't even know whether I will be requiring those 8 computers or not, because I will not have that kind of a traffic, right? Now, this is a scenario wherein you probably have enough money, but what about the scenario where you open a company, you open a startup, right? And your startup, you develop an app, you don't have any funds, but your app is being loved by everyone, and because of that, a lot of people are trying to use your app, but because you have not invested or you don't have that kind of money to invest in infrastructure, 1,000 people are trying to use your app, they are not able to do that because your server is already overloaded, right? So these were the problems that were being faced by a lot of people. And then somebody suggested, you know what, I'm a guy who has a company which is heavily invested. I have a lot of funds, and I have some servers which are running idle because I'm not using them. So why don't you use these servers, and you can just pay me the rent for the amount of time that you use these servers for, right? And this kind of a statement was actually made by Amazon, right? So Amazon was the first company who basically came up with the idea that why don't I rent my servers, because I have a fleet of servers, I have a lot of money, I would need these servers in the future probably, but right now they're just sitting idle. So why don't I rent these to people and see if they're interested? And that's how the cloud era began. And then you will see that since AWS is the largest cloud provider right now, and that probably is because of the reason that were the first guys who basically made the cloud business actually viable. They made it profitable, right? So after that, Microsoft came in, I think 6 or 7 years later, when Amazon launched their cloud provider, and then even Google Cloud Platform followed it. And right now, the three biggest players in the market are Amazon, Azure, and Google Cloud. And if you see their profits, if you talk about Amazon, Amazon probably will be the largest e-commerce company in the world, but 80% or 70% of its profit actually comes from cloud business. It actually comes from renting servers. Did you know that? Right? So cloud is actually a very huge deal. There are a lot of people who want infrastructure on demand. They want infrastructure for just the time they want to use it for. They don't want to buy servers. And we are going to discuss as we move along that what could be the other advantages of renting rather than buying your own infrastructure. Okay, so coming back to this slide, guys, what is cloud computing? Cloud computing is nothing but the business of renting servers to someone, and when they are done with using the servers, they can just return it back to me, and I will only charge them for the amount of time they rented those servers from me. This is what cloud computing is. Okay, Moving forward, now let's go ahead and understand the use case. Okay, so let's say I am a guy who basically wants to start a company, and I basically go ahead and develop an application like Instagram. Okay, so I developed this uh, a mobile application, right? And when I made this mobile application, I basically was like, okay, so this application is ready, and I think this is going to be the next big thing, right? And I want to make it available to the world. So what I do is I basically go ahead and buy some servers, and I put my application on these servers. So let's say I have that kind of money wherein I can invest. And instead of renting servers, which probably is not an option in the era which I am sitting in, I buy some servers, and on these servers, I put my application that I created, and now it gets available to the world, right? So this is how any application, any website which was launched was typically made available on the internet. Okay, so how did this basically go? So what were the advantages? What were the disadvantages of having this kind of a setup? So first of all, let's talk about the advantages. So had this person not bought these servers, if these servers were not bought and they were basically, they were basically rented. In that case, this developer had to do little or no investment. But because this guy had the money, so he bought the server. So in this case, this advantage becomes a disadvantage, wherein, or you can say, if you buy your own infrastructure, you have to do a huge amount of investment, right? But let's think of a scenario wherein these servers, if he has deployed them, and he's the only guy, let's assume, that who has worked on this application, and he has all the money in the world, like I said, to buy these servers. Now what are the problems that this guy can face? Okay, the first problem could be, now that I've deployed my application on these servers are basically hardware, right? And hardware can go bad anytime. So tomorrow, let's say there is a power outage in my data center, and because of which my servers basically go down. And since I was the only person who was handling this, I realized that, you know what, I cannot handle this alone. So I will have to I will have to hire some people who can do the infrastructure management for me, who can basically look into making sure that internet is available all the time, electricity is available all the time, and even if there is any hardware fault, that can also be available all the time. So I hire a team, maintenance team, and then they basically start to look out for my servers. And then I think, okay, yes, so people are happy. Now I can actually go ahead and work on my application in order to make the suggestions which people are making. Let's say if you're using Instagram, you probably will think, okay, this month, if we add this one more feature, I think it will be perfect. So based on community feedback, based on product feedback, that's how companies basically keep on upgrading their software. And same feedback you also get, and you feel, okay, so I've got these feature requests, let me go ahead and add those to my application. Now while you're doing that, let's assume your administrator team comes in and they say, uh, there's a good news and a bad news. The good news is that your app has become viral, and suddenly there are a lot of people who are trying to access your application. But the bad news is that all the servers that you have bought, they are out of uh, they are out of capacity now, which basically means they're all overloaded, and the app is running very slow, and new users are not able to sign up because there are thousands of users who have basically, they have come all of a sudden on our platform, and they are trying to access your application now. So you have all the money in the world, right? So you tell your production team, all right, no problem, go ahead and buy more servers and fix this problem. So the production team does that, but you later realize that buying servers, setting them up, adding them to your infrastructure is a time consuming task. And at the same time, guys, also realize the fact that hardware gets outdated very fast. So today, if you buy the fastest processor in the world, 1 year down the line, it will not be the fastest processor in the world. 2 years down the line, probably it will start giving you problems. 3 years down the line, all your competitors will have better hardware than you, right? And could be that you have taken a loan 3 years back to buy all that infrastructure, and you're still paying the EMI for that probably because you did not get the right profit out of your business, right? So all these problems were there, and because of these problems, when cloud came into the picture, a lot of things changed. And what things were there that basically got changed? Now with the cloud scenario, because you have to rent infrastructure, you don't have to do any investment, right? If I am a guy who wants to start a company today, I have to just sign up on AWS and I can start the servers that I want. And at the month end, if let's say if I'm using a 32 GB RAM server with around 8 cores of CPU, the monthly rent, if I run this 24/7, the monthly rent that will incur to me will be around 12 to 13,000 rupees, and that's it, right? And a 32 gig server can actually serve around 1,500 people for an application like Instagram. So the problem is solved. And let's say tomorrow I realize that my app has become viral and I suddenly need to add new infrastructure. This can be done in minutes. So earlier, when I had to add servers, I had to put in the right software, I had to make it a part of the cluster. If I were doing those tasks, it would at least take me 2 to 3 days, given the fact that the system will be shipped to my place, then I'll be adding the servers, I'll be putting it into my network. It would take 2 to 3 days for the server to come in and be added to my cluster. But now with cloud, I can get a new server in minutes, sometimes in even seconds if you're good with cloud, right? So it was little and no investment because the problem of infrastructure could be solved in minutes, right? More focus of yours will go on app development. Also, one more thing, if you are buying or if you are renting server from cloud, the power outage, the internet outage, everything is managed by the cloud provider. They say that it is my data center. I'm gonna make sure that it is your server is up all the time, right? So that you don't have to worry about it. So you again have to don't have to basically hire any production team who or hardware engineers who can monitor your servers. Everything will be done by the cloud provider themselves, right? And hence that comes my third point comes that basically it requires even less workforce. So not only you're investing less, not only you're paying your total cost of operations go less because of the lesser workforce, but even you can move put your focus more on the application that you're developing rather than thinking about the infrastructure, right? So these were the advantages that cloud computing carries, and this is why it has become such a hit in the current world that companies who have that kind of money to maintain their own servers also have started to shift their servers on cloud. Why? Because they don't want that headache of managing infrastructures. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about some of the products that you're using right now that you won't even realize are actually cloud products or products which are actually making use of cloud infrastructure. So Google Drive, as you all know, is basically it's basically a place where you can upload files, you can create spreadsheets, you can create Word documents, right? So all of this is hosted on the Google Cloud platform. Similarly, if you talk about Netflix, Netflix is basically the world's number one uh, paid subscription platform for watching movies and watching series. Even Netflix is hosted on the AWS cloud platform. Airbnb, which is basically a place where you can rent hotels, you can rent PGs, right? They are also hosted on cloud. Amazon, the largest e-commerce company in the world, is basically also hosted on cloud, right? Which is hosted on AWS. Prime Video, which is again a video streaming service, is hosted on cloud. So these are some products that you probably are using every day, and they are hosted on a cloud platform like AWS or Microsoft Azure or even Google Cloud Platform. All right. Moving forward, so now I would be discussing the models on which companies basically operate to make themselves available in the cloud business. Let's go ahead now and understand the cloud computing models. Okay. So guys, there are two kind of models in cloud when you talk about the way they are giving their services out, right? So the first model, the first kind of model that you will learn about in cloud are called deployment models, and then there is something called as service models. So what are deployment models? In deployment models, you basically have three parts.
The first is public cloud, the second is private cloud, and the third is hybrid cloud. So, what are the different kind of ways that you can deploy in cloud? It is basically either a public cloud, a private cloud, or a hybrid cloud. So companies who are working with cloud computing can basically give you an option of where how do you want to deploy your architecture. If you want to deploy it in public cloud, we have those services and this is the pricing for that. If you want a private cloud, this is the pricing for it and this is the way, or these are the services that you can use in private cloud. If you want a hybrid cloud, this is the way you can do it. So companies which are basically offering you cloud services can offer you a deployment mode in these three models. So what these three models are, we will be discussing in a while. On the other hand, when we talk about service models, so as a cloud computing company, I can give you three kind of services. I can either give you infrastructure as a service, I can either give you platform as a service, or I can give you software as a service. So don't get confused between these two models. Deployment models is a different business sphere. Service model is a different business sphere. And when somebody asks me that, okay, so you're a cloud computing company, what are the different kind of services that you offer? So in that case, I will be giving them an option from my service models. If someone asks me what are the deployment options in your cloud provider, I will be telling them about my deployment models. Okay, so these two questions, for answering these two questions, we have these two domains, and these two domains, let's go ahead and discuss them. So let's go ahead and first understand about deployment models and particularly about public cloud first. So guys, what is public cloud? Let's go ahead and understand that. So let's first discuss about public cloud. So guys, public cloud is basically a cloud which can be used by multiple people. Now, what do you mean by that? So let's say, so let's talk about how cloud computing has basically been profitable, how it's a profitable business, right? So if you talk about the rent of servers that you probably can get on cloud computing platforms like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud Platform, they are as low as $0.0005 an hour, right? So that is the kind of pricing that you get when you are working with cloud. And the minimum specification that you can get in AWS is a 1 GB RAM of server with one core of CPU. And I think there is also an option of getting zero point 0.5 GB of RAM on now. But I think a zero point 0.5 GB of RAM nobody would use in a production architecture. So a 1 GB RAM of a machine with one core CPU is going to cost you $0.0005 an hour, right? So how can a cloud provider offer you this incredible pricing in the world like today when the costs are going up for everything? Right? So that is possible using something called as virtualization. So what I do is basically I have one server or I have one computer wherein my RAM would be around 128 GB and I would have around 32 or even 64 core of CPUs. So this one server of mine can host multiple operating systems or can host multiple virtual machines. So let's say today someone comes in and says, I want a 4 GB RAM and a 4 core CPU. What I will do is in this big server, in this one big server that I have, I will create a virtual machine which has 4 GB RAM and 4 core CPU, right? If somebody tomorrow asks me he wants a 1 GB RAM and a 1 core CPU in this same server, I can deploy that same machine and I can give that virtual machine to someone else. So basically, what I'm doing is from one big server, I can actually give out 30 or 40 virtual machines to people. And when I say 30 or 40 virtual machines, these could be 30 or 40 customers to which I can offer my services. Right? So this is what public cloud is. A public cloud basically means that on one server there can be many customers who can have their application and you won't even get to know about it, right? So if tomorrow if you want to launch a 32 GB machine with around 8 core of CPU, right? And let's say you are Amazon. and tomorrow, let's say Walmart also wants to open a server of around 32 GB RAM of 8 core CPU. Now these two companies are competitors, right? But still, both their applications can be available on the same system, right? So you are getting my point, right? So that basically is public cloud. So in public cloud model, what when you deploy your infrastructure, it's obviously going to be very cheap. But what the company says is that your machines will be a part of a bigger server, and that bigger server will be shared by many customer of ours. Now, what are the downsides of this? There are no downsides actually, but there are companies which have some compliance with respect to the data which they can put on cloud, right? So it is very secure. So you as a person will never realize that somebody else is also having a virtual machine or is sharing the same hardware as you while you're working on it, right? There has been no leaks till date that someone from one virtual machine has sabotaged someone else's virtual machine on the same hardware. This has never been the case. But again, technology, as we use it every day, it can be hacked, right? Or there are always security related doubts which companies have, and they don't want to risk anything which can probably go wrong in the future, if even if it hasn't happened till date. And because of that, big companies like Amazon, big companies like Google, they have very strict compliance laws, data compliance laws. And because of that, they condemn using services like public cloud. They do not want to share their hardware with any other company, even if it is the most secure system in the world, right? And because of that, if companies like Netflix, let's say, assume even Netflix is a very big company now, which basically is there on the public, uh, or which is probably operating to a public domain. They would also want that if they're running their Netflix application on AWS, they do not want their hardware to be shared with anyone else. And that's why what AWS says is no issues. If you think you do not want to deploy your application on public cloud, I can give you an option of deploying it on a private cloud as well. And this is exactly what private cloud is. Now let's go ahead and understand what private cloud is. So in private cloud, what happens is you do not share the same hardware as the other customer of the same cloud provider. You are guaranteed that whatever server your application is on, only your application is on there and no other server will be deployed. If you want to deploy more virtual machines, you can do that. And if you're doing that, it will be deployed on the same server. That is what private cloud is for you. And obviously, the pricing of private cloud is different. If you're deploying your application on private cloud, it will cost you a bit more, but yes, you get that satisfaction. You can not have anyone else interfering in the hardware that you have deployed your application in. And because of this, a lot of companies which have strict compliance, data compliance laws also agree to deploy their applications on AWS or Azure or Google Cloud Platform, because they are told that their application will not be shared, the hardware on which their application is being deployed will not be shared by anyone else. Okay, and that is private cloud for you. One more variant of private cloud which exists is when you are not using any cloud provider. What you do is basically you have all the money in the world and you have the such compliance laws in which you do not want to trust any cloud provider apart from your own cloud. So probably companies like IBM, let's say, IBM has their own cloud. Okay. So what they do is they have all the money in the world. So what they've done is they have bought a stack of servers. And what they say is the same technology using which Amazon is offering their customers cloud, I can offer my employees the servers that they want from a bigger server that I have bought. And from this bigger server, I will only give servers to my employees, right? Or it will only be used for my internal company matters. I will not be using it for any other task. And this is also called private cloud. So when you own the infrastructure and you use it as a cloud platform, that is also called private cloud. And when you rent servers, but you get in a deal with the company and tell them that Nobody else can actually share this hardware with me. That is also called private cloud. Okay, so public cloud is when the virtual machine that you have deployed, that hardware can be shared by anyone else. That is public cloud. And private cloud is that when you deploy your application on the server, whichever server you're deploying your application on, that server will not be used by anyone else apart from your applications. That is private cloud. And if you own the servers and you only make it available for your internal team, or you only make use of it for make use of it personally, then even that is called private cloud. Moving forward, then there is a third kind of cloud which exists there, which is called hybrid cloud. And this is again very famous. And the reason for that is, let's say IBM as a company says that for some applications of mine, I will be making use of my own infrastructure. Why? Because these servers are 20, 25 years old, and they are running applications which probably none of the current hardware can support, right? And because of that, I cannot move my application anywhere except these servers. So what I can do is I will keep these servers on, I will keep on using them, but any new application that I have, I can deploy it on a cloud provider. I can deploy it on a cloud provider like AWS. I can deploy it on a cloud provider like Azure. And the mixture of these two things, when in some infrastructure of yours is on private cloud and some infrastructure of yours is on public cloud, then this is called hybrid cloud, right? So it can even be the case that you tell AWS, you know what, these four applications of mine cannot share hardware with anyone else, but these four or five applications which are others, these are basically public facing applications, and hence I do not mind if these applications share hardware with other people. So these four applications you can deploy on public cloud, and these four applications you can deploy on private cloud. So again, this whole setup is would be called hybrid cloud, because one individual is making use of private cloud and public cloud both. And this is what hybrid cloud is. Moving forward, now let's move on and talk about our second type of models, which are called service models. But before we move on to that, guys, any questions you guys have, please let me know. Mohammed says, is Google Drive a public cloud? No, Mohammed. Reason being, Google Drive is owned by Google, right? So if let's say I am uploading anything on Google Drive, since it is owned by Google, it has been deployed on their servers. And obviously if they are deploying something on their servers, they will be they have so many applications out there that I don't think on their server they will have any extra space for any other application for any other customer, right? Apart from that as well, when you talk about the Google Cloud Platform, it is basically a dashboard using which you can deploy servers. So even when we say that Google makes use of its own cloud for applications, I don't think they're using that dashboard for deploying their applications, right? They have a team which develop the dashboard for the customers, but they have their own internal tools or processes using which they can deploy. They are deploying their applications, and I think they keep the production workload separate. They won't be uh, putting the same servers that they have. Probably the Google search, if it's working on some server, it's not like if you deploy a server of yours that will also be available on that Google search server. But you never know. I mean, they have not made any public announcements for this as well. But as far as I understand, as a person who's working in the IT industry, I don't think that would be the case, right? Any Google product that is available to us will have an isolated environment where it is deployed. And but what Google has basically done for us is that the same hardware technology that they basically use for their own things, for example Google Drive will work on some special sort of servers which will have custom CPUs and custom RAMs, right? So that infrastructure, that same infrastructure, that same quality of infrastructure they have made available using their GCP platform, which we can use to deploy our kind of applications. So that is something that they have done. But when you say is Google Drive a public cloud product, I don't think so, because the servers on which Google Cloud will be hosted, I don't think on those same servers Google will allow somebody else to deploy their own application. Kiran says hybrid cloud is not clear. Well, Kiran, hybrid cloud basically you've understood public and private, right? So if a company is making use of both public cloud and private cloud as an organization, let's say you as a customer want both private cloud for some applications and you want public cloud for some applications. Reason being, let's say you have three applications which you think you require the private cloud for because your company has the compliance laws as such that if you are deploying, let's say, this MySQL database anywhere, it cannot share any hardware with anything else, right? Because this MySQL database has a lot of information about my users, and I don't want to take any chance for releasing the user information on the internet. I don't want to take any chance. So you deploy it on a private cloud, and I don't care about the cost which we are going to incur. But let's say we are talking about a website that the same company has. Now, websites, they have HTMLs, they have CSS, right? And this is anyways available out on the uh, internet, right? So if you do a view page source, you can see the HTMLs, you can see the CSS. So these servers, they say, okay, so we can save some cost over here. You can put these on the public cloud, but I want my databases to be on the private cloud. So when you're using this kind of a setup, it's basically called hybrid cloud. And you take these decisions because these decisions will affect your costs. So somewhere where security is probably not required, why go and give more money for that when you already have an option of deploying it on the public cloud? So that's the point, right? But yes, for applications which are critical in nature, we will obviously deploy it on a private cloud infrastructure, right? I hope, Kiran, it's clear now. So Kiran says, how is it possible to use both public and private cloud? I mean, combination of private and public clouds. And then you're saying yes. So Kiran, like I give you the example that when I have a database, I can deploy it on private cloud. And when I have a website which does not have any critical information, I can put it on the public cloud. So this website server that I'm going to use, I'm going to save costs over there as a company, right? And hence I can use this combination. Okay, guys, so let's go ahead and understand what are service models now. So, guys, there are three kind of service models available, and or there are three kind of services which cloud providers provide. The first kind of service is called infrastructure as a service. The second one is called platform as a service, and the third one is called software as a service. Okay, so what is infrastructure as a service? So let's say as a cloud provider, what I do is I rent servers. Okay. And when I rent servers, I basically give you the option of using the server's operating system to deploy any or to install any kind of software. So it's like if I'm using this laptop right now, I can do anything on this laptop, right? I can install whatever software I want. I can install uh, I can whenever I want, I can delete any software I want, etc. If I want to install database on it, I can install database on it and I can make it a database server. If I want, I can install some web server software on it and I can make it a web server. If I want, I can install games on the system and I can play games, right? It's up to me how I want to use this server. Why? Because I have the access to the operating system, I have the access to the infrastructure, right? And because of that, I can do anything on on this server. So this is basically in this case, I have access to the infrastructure. Similarly, when a cloud provider gives you access to the operating system of the server that you have rented, right? So you have an option of doing anything with that server. You can install database, you can install a web server, you can even install games. If you want, you can even download movies, you can browse YouTube, you can do anything on that server, right? Why? Because the infrastructure has been made available to you. The operating system has been made available to you. And this kind of service is called infrastructure as a service. When you get access to the whole operating system of the server so that you can do anything, it's called infrastructure as a service. Okay. And then you have complete control of what you do on that server. But so by or what are the disadvantages of having infrastructure as a service? The disadvantage of having infrastructure as a service is that let's say you are a guy who is very good at creating applications. You are a guy who knows pretty much everything about how a website is created, but you do not know anything about, let's say, Linux operating systems or how an application is deployed on the internet. So in that case, infrastructure as a service does not make any sense to you. You have made the application, everything is working fine on that application, but now because you do not know how to make that application live on the internet, you hire someone, and that someone probably knows Linux. He knows how to work with uh, Linux operating systems and install softwares over there, and then he knows how to put your application on that operating system to make it available to the world. So in this case, becomes a disadvantage for you because you need someone help in order to deploy your application. So let's say you're a guy who probably does not want to deal with installing softwares, handling the operating system, etc. All you want to do is you want to create your application, and you want an interface using which you are just asked for your application code, and rest somebody else can handle where they can deploy your application. That is called platform as a service, right? So in platform as a service, the cloud provider says it's all right. You don't have to deal with operating systems. You don't have to deal with installing softwares. You just tell me what kind of application you have that you want to deploy, and I will automatically create a system for you wherein you have the right operating systems, wherein you have the right softwares, and you just give me the code and I will deploy your application over it. And in turn, I will just give you a link wherein your application is deployed. So as a person, you just have to come to my website, upload your code, click on deploy, and your application is deployed. You don't have to deal with any deployment of servers. You don't have to deal with working of operating systems. You don't have to deal with installing softwares, installing firewalls. I will do that for you. So that's called platform as a service. I give you a platform, I give you a dashboard using which you can get your work done. I'm not giving you the access to the operating system. Okay, I think I have a question. All right. Suresh says, who takes care of operating system vulnerability in platform as a service? Well, Suresh, OS vulnerabilities. So when you say OS vulnerabilities, I think what you're asking about is who takes care of updating the operating system when required, who takes care of putting the latest security patches. So that is done by the cloud provider themselves. Okay, they are not uh, you are not responsible for doing that. My point. So the next question that you have asked is, are the security standards taken care through OS vulnerability scans in PaaS? If so, is that shared to clients or customers from AWS vendor team? No, Suresh, that is not done. Right. So platform as a service basically gives you the option of not dealing with the operating system directly. So it's similar to you can say, if any of you have worked with probably GoDaddy, you will see that when you work with GoDaddy, they do not give you access to the operating system. Instead, they give you something called as a cPanel access, and on that cPanel access you can upload the files directly onto the server. You can probably log into the database directly. You can update the domain name directly. You do not have to deal with these servers. You do not have to deal with the operating system. And over there you also have an option which is called administration settings, where you can upload or downgrade, upgrade or downgrade softwares according to your will without touching the operating system. So in case there are any options of dealing with vulnerabilities, instead of, so let's take an example. If you are working with an operating system and if you are working with a firewall, you know that when you want to make your website available to the world, you have to basically open port 443 in case it's an HTTPS application, or you have to open port 80. So as a developer, currently you need to have that knowledge. Even if you're using platform as a service, you need to know that you have to open port 80 and port 443. But in case you were dealing with an operating system and you had to enable these ports, you'll have to write a command in the Linux operating system, or if you were working with Windows, you would know where exactly to go in the firewall to open these ports. But now, as a developer, if I'm using this platform or if I'm using this dashboard, which the cloud provider has given me, it will basically tell me that there is a firewall section. If I click on firewall, it will ask me which ports you want to open, right? And I can just click on the ports that I want to open and my job is done. So everything is more simplified, everything is more easy for me to understand and do, rather than when I was dealing with an operating system, everything had to be done uh, with a prior knowledge. So the point of having platform as a service is basically to make our jobs easier. But yes, the required knowledge for securing your servers, for putting in the right protocols, or removing the protocols that you do not want, is in your hands through the dashboard. Okay, Mohammed is saying, can I establish Windows OS on MacBook using infrastructure as a service? If yes, then how is it different from an emulator? Okay, so I think what you're asking is, can I basically rent a Windows operating system and can I access it using my MacBook? So yes, you can do that. Mohammed, the way it is different is when you use an emulator, then what you're doing is basically you are running it on your MacBook's infrastructure, right? It's basically like running the virtual machine on your own hardware. So your hardware, so let's say if your MacBook has 8 GB of RAM and it has 4 core of CPU, the 2 cores of your system and around 4 GB of RAM would be used by the Windows operating system. But when you are dealing with a cloud provider's infrastructure as a service, they are giving their own infrastructure, they're giving their own RAM, own CPU for that. And all you're doing is you're downloading a software for RDP, Microsoft Remote Desktop, and through that you will be able to access the Windows system which is deployed on the cloud provider's data center. In that case, your hardware is not being used, your RAM is not being blocked, your CPU cores are not being blocked. That is the difference. Ram says OS patching will be done by whom? Well, Ram, in the dashboard you will have an option of upgrading. See, there are two things that you can do over here. There is something called as auto minor version upgrade, which basically means if there is a minor upgrade which has come to the operating system, and if you enable auto updation in that case, automatically your server will be upgraded. But as you know, whenever a subsystem is upgraded, there is a downtime that your application will face. So if you enable automatic updating, in that case, it will ask you a window, and in that window, it will uh, make your server to go down, update the software, and again make it up. So that upgrading is handled by the cloud provider. But if in case you do not enable that, then in your dashboard you will get an option then that when do you want to do it and if you want to do it or not. So in that case, it's up to you. Then it's in your hands when you want to do it from the dashboard. But if you were dealing with the operating system directly, you will probably have to know how to upgrade the software by yourself. Over there, there is no auto minor version upgrade. It has to be done by you. But here in platform as a service, you get this option. I hope it's clear. Arun says, what is Elastic Beanstalk? Well, Arun, in the current context that we are discussing, Elastic Beanstalk is a platform as a service. Bay says, my connection is bad. Will you send us a recorded session, please? Yes, Bay, it will be sent out to you. Riho says, can you give any common example of IaaS and PaaS? Well, Riho, in terms of AWS, when you use AWS EC2, that is infrastructure as a service. And in platform as a service, if with regards to AWS, it's Elastic Beanstalk. For infrastructure as a service, like I said, if you're using your own computer, that's basically infrastructure that you're using, but it's not as a service because it's, yeah, you own that system. But let's say you basically launch a service in a cloud provider which is giving you the operating system access. That is, you can, if it's a window machine, you can probably do a remote desktop from your system into it, and then you will be able to access that screen. That is infrastructure as a service. They have launched an operating system for you, they have launched a server for you, they have launched a virtual machine for you, and they're telling you you can use this virtual machine, it's all yours. That's infrastructure as a service. Platform as a service, you can imagine, for example, if you're using Google Drive. In Google Drive, all you do is you can upload all the files that you want by simple drag and drop, right? If you were trying to do this with a server, which probably uh, you have the operating system to it, so probably you'll have to copy the files on the server using the FTP protocol, right? But over here, you can simply open Google Drive. They're given you a dashboard. They don't want you to know anything about FTP. They don't want you to know anything about networking, etc. They're just asking you drag and drop the file, and I will save it for you. That's a platform as a service. I hope that difference is clear. Kiran says, is hardware or software like Windows OS crashes, then who will be handling it? Well, Kiran, if hardware crashes, the cloud provider will take care that your server is up in no time. If operating system crashes, again, you have an option of restarting the server. So when you're working with cloud, there are a lot of health checks that you can apply on machines, right? So there you have an option of checking whether a system is healthy or not, and in case the system is not healthy, what cloud the settings that you can do in cloud is that it will restart or create a new server for you, right? So this is an advanced concept. It's basically called auto scaling. And in auto scaling, basically what happens is, in case there is a server which is hosting your application, but that server crashes for some reason and is not responding, so in AWS, you can set up health checks, which will automatically check every minute whether your server is working or not. And in case it is not working, it can create the same server again with your application and it will make it available. So who handles it? The cloud provider can handle it, but who configures it? You will have to configure it. You will have to configure your cloud provider to basically launch the server again in case anything crashes on your server, etc. Suresh says AWS at Amazon.com is the portal to create an account in Explore. Yes, Suresh. To software as a service now. So what is software as a service? So what we have seen till now is infrastructure as a service where we get access to an operating system. We have seen a platform as a service wherein we get access to a dashboard kind of a thing where I can upload my application as and when required. Then there is a third kind of service which is given by cloud providers, and it's called software as a service. Now, what do you mean by that? So let's take an example over here. So when you use Google Drive, you have an option of using Google Docs. What is Google Docs? Google Docs basically enable you to write documents, right? It's similar to having Microsoft Word on your system, but when you do it with Google Drive, in that case, you don't have to do Control S every time. Everything is automatically saved on Google Drive, right? So Google Doc is a prime example of software as a service. So the Google Cloud or the Google company is giving you a software to use without you worrying where is the software installed, where is the data being saved. All you know is that you can use this software and this software is being hosted on cloud. This is called software as a service. Similarly, another example from Google Drive could be Google Spreadsheets. So it basically gives you Microsoft Excel as a service in Google. I mean, it's not exactly Microsoft Excel. You can say it's Excel as a service on cloud. So again, it's a software that you can use. Moving out from the Google cloud domain, if you are using any CRM, so a lot of you guys, if you belong to either from if you're from a sales background or if you are from marketing background, you will understand there is something called as customer relationship management. So in this, all the details with respect to the customer can be filled by a sales guy while he's talking to them, and this can be referred to by other people when they're dealing with the same customer or when they want to check what product he or she has bought on the platform, or what things or actions did the customer do last time when he visited the website. So all these are softwares, all these are websites which are basically hosted, and you don't care where these websites are hosted, where the data is being saved. All you know is that if you want, you can use these websites as and when you want. They are available on a certain URL. So that's called software as a service. Now, again, a lot of things, a lot of times, you might think that how can you differentiate between something such as a platform as a service or a software as a service? For example, let me throw a question at you. Netflix.com, what do you think? Is it platform as a service or is it software as a service? Suresh says all three. Suhas says software as a service. Radha says platform as a service. Riho says software. Dwight says software. Sami says platform. Sandeep says platform. Kiran says platform. Mahesh says SaaS. Okay, so I think two people said it's all three, that it is infrastructure also, platform as a software also. Most of the people are saying software, some people are saying platform. Okay, so let me ask it one by one. So the people who think it's also infrastructure as a service, can you tell me why Netflix is infrastructure as a service? So anybody who wants to speak out, they can type over here and I'll just unmute them, and then you can tell me why do you think Netflix is infrastructure as a service. Okay, Suresh says he wants to explain. Let me do that.
Hi, good evening to everyone. Okay, that was a good explanation. Thank you for sending the session. Okay, quickly. So as Netflix.com, the web service is software as a service, but when we look into the infrastructure as a whole, it would run the web servers, right? And it is hosted on the servers running the web services. So in that case, it is also the infrastructure. Thanks.
But for you, okay, good point. But what is it for you? When you use Netflix, what is it for you?
It's a software.
It's a software, right? So, like Suresh rightly pointed out, guys, it all depends on what side of the software are you on. If you talk about Netflix for us as consumers, for us, we cannot go ahead and use, the Netflix.com's web servers or databases servers operating system. Hence, for us, it cannot be infrastructure as a service. Okay. Now, I want someone who said a platform as a service to explain. So, who would be doing that? Please let me know. People who think Netflix is software as a service who want to explain. Samir says for an end user, it's software as a service. Yes, Samir. All right. Okay. I think the answer is here. So, like Samir says, as an end user, since you can only use it for watching movies or for watching series, it's a software as a service, right? Okay, let me throw one more question at you. What do you think is Google Drive as a website? What do you think is Google Drive as a website? Radha says it's software as a service. Okay. Dwight says SaaS. Arun says platform. Mahesh says SaaS. Arun says Google Drive is pass. Suresh says pass. Okay. Okay. So over here, actually, you all are right. It's either pass or SaaS. Why it's a platform? Because I mean, it's not like uh, you can only use it. If you want, you can upload your own data also over there. You can upload your own files also over there. So when you talk about what is a dashboard is a place where you can do the customizations as you want, right? So if you want, you can upload your files on Google Drive. If you want, you can download the files from there. If you want, you can edit the documents over there. So in that sense, it can be both. It can be called both a platform as a service or a software as a service. But I think the point of having this conversation over here is that you understand what is the difference, right? So since now we can discuss what is an infrastructure as a service, what is a platform as a service, and what is a software as a service, I think we are all on the same page. We do understand what each of these services are. Okay, I have a question. Is cloud gaming SaaS? Yes. So games are softwares, right? And if uh, those games are available on the web and you are able to play them, that's software as a service. Okay. So let's go ahead now and let's talk about cloud providers. So whatever we have discussed so far with respect to what is cloud, the definition of cloud, the different models which are there in cloud, deployment models, service models, all these are common for all the cloud providers that we have seen. be it AWS, be it Alibaba Cloud, be it Azure, be it Google Cloud, any company which basically is a cloud provider will have these models in place some way or the other. Either one model can be available, or all the models can be available, or a combination of one or two can be available. But they all work within what we have just discussed. There will be nothing outside what we have just discussed, right? Now let's go ahead. What are the different kind of companies who have adopted, these business models and are giving us services? Let's go ahead and understand them. So, guys, the top three cloud providers which are there in the market right now are AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. And sequentially, in the sequence that I've told you, they can be basically ranked with respect to the market share that they have, or the customer share that they have in the market. So AWS has the largest customer base. The second largest customer base is by Microsoft Azure, and the third largest customer base is by Google Cloud. Right. So AWS, you can say, is the leader in the cloud market space right now, and that is why somebody who's starting with cloud can start with AWS, because larger the market share, more are the job opportunities for that cloud provider, right? So if you want to start with cloud, if you are start wanting to start with the cloud industry, AWS is the most mature product out there, and I think it makes sense for anyone who's starting new with cloud to start with AWS, because not only it is mature, but there are also more job opportunities for AWS. Then you have Azure. So Azure is the second largest cloud provider, and there are again abundant job opportunities for Azure as well. And Google Cloud Platform is something which you can always um, learn, but learn it as a second priority. First, you should either learn AWS or you should learn Microsoft Azure. One more quick thing from a career advice that I can give to all of you who would probably be in the cloud business in some years, that learning only one cloud provider will not help when you want to grow in your career. So if I am a company and if I have a product which I've made available on the internet, I as a company will not always rely on only one cloud provider, given I have reached a certain stage in my company where my product matters a lot. I cannot sustain a downtime. If that is the case, I will never ever rely on only one cloud platform. So if all my infrastructure is on AWS, and if tomorrow, because of some reason, because of some glitch, the whole AWS goes down, which will never be the case, but in case that happens, I don't want to be locked into only AWS. So I always keep my option open as a businessman, as a CEO, as a CTO. I always keep my options open, and I have multiple cloud providers in my bucket, wherein I can deploy replicas of my application, so that if tomorrow, in case, let's take this scenario as well, if tomorrow AWS increases its cost in terms of the rent that it is offering its customers, I should have an option to take all my servers out of AWS and actually put into some other cloud without sustaining any downtime, right? So that's why what companies do is they distribute their loads among multiple cloud providers to never be in a situation where they get locked into a certain cloud provider. Netflix, which basically has advertised or endorsed AWS the most, also has adopted this methodology where they are using AWS for most of their things, but they have also kept some of their critical servers replicated on other cloud providers, so that if tomorrow AWS is not the most profitable cloud to be on, it can basically shift their services to other cloud providers. Okay, so as if you want to be a successful cloud engineer, only learning one cloud provider will not help, because obviously in the future you will be working for such businesses, and these businesses expect their employees to be flexible in terms of which cloud provider they can work on. But to learn the most user friendly, if you were to ask me should be the most user friendly, or what should be the first choice of learning a cloud provider, the answer from my side would be AWS. Okay, all right. So these are the different cloud providers which are out there, and we are going to focus our attention on AWS. And I told you the reason for that. So let's go ahead and understand what is AWS exactly. So guys, AWS is basically a company which rents servers, right? It provides on-demand cloud computing platform for two individuals or businesses, or even governments. So the governments have the strongest data compliance laws in the whole world, right? For example, uh, there are some cloud providers which also give you data centers in China. And as you would know, there some companies like you would have heard. So if I were to take the case of India, there was a strong backlash with regards to some apps which were storing their data on in China's servers. Right, so companies who basically store data in China's servers, they are getting a backlash right now because of the political reason that companies now have started to shift their data from the China servers to some other server which is probably available or made available by the cloud providers. Similarly, if we were to talk about China, China as a company or as a country uh, probably does not want their own companies, their home companies to put data on data centers which are outside of China. So let's say if AWS or Azure wants to, tap the customers or tap the customer base which is there in China, they will have to make available servers which are there in the China region, so that the companies over there can store the data or can use AWS services in order for their app, in basically in order to run their applications. In case AWS does not make a data center in China, they are losing out. I mean, the customer base in China, because there it is not allowed to store the any application data, Chinese application data on some other data center, right? So because of these laws, data centers are available worldwide, and that is why even governments, let's say if the Chinese government has to make use of cloud provider for their websites, for their applications, they will also prefer that the data centers are there in their own country. They will prefer to have a private cloud. So if all these features are given by a cloud provider to the public, obviously the governments or even big organizations which have strong data compliance laws will also start to settle on cloud providers like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud Platform for that matter. So that is AWS for you guys. It basically gives you a cloud computing platform, or it gives you cloud computing services on a metered pay as you go basis, which basically means it only will charge you rent for the amount of time you use those services. If you use a server for half an hour, it will only charge you for half an hour. If you use a server for 1 year, it will only charge you for 1 year. If you use a server for 2 hours, it will only charge you for 2 hours, but nothing more, nothing less. It can be as you can run those servers as long as you want. And when you feel you want to upgrade your servers from a certain configuration to some other configuration, or even downgrade in that matter, you can do that as well. And the prices will change accordingly. So it will only charge you for the time that you use the higher config for. And then when you have migrated to the lower config, it will now charge you for the lower config price. In case you want to shut down all your servers, do not want to use them again, it will not ask you any question. It will do that, and it will only charge you for the time that you use the service. All right, that is AWS for you, and that is any cloud provider that we discussed for you. So this is the main crux of why AWS or cloud computing in general is so famous. Okay, now enough about what cloud is, what AWS is. Now let's get into the technical details of what AWS actually offers you. Okay, so AWS offers you services in multiple domains. They offer services in compute, they offer services in storage, database, security, management, customer engagement, or app integration. So all these are different kind of categories in which AWS has came up solutions for. And any of these categories you can pick up and use a service which is available in cloud. For example, let's say you want an SQL server, in cloud for storing all your information or storing all your website data. So instead of deploying uh, a Linux machine in cloud and then installing the SQL server over there, what you can do is you can just go to the database domain, choose that you want to deploy an SQL server, and within minutes an SQL server will be deployed for you without you working on the operating system to do that. And that's again a platform as a service example for you, right? Similarly, if you want storage services, it has storage services as well. You don't have to start with a server from scratch and then download the storage softwares on it to work with it. It has pre-built services for storage which you can use in order to get your work done. Okay, and then you have security, you have management, you have customer engagement, app integration. Or in all these domains you have different services that you can use AWS with, and that is exactly the whole course that is offered by Intellipaat for you, right? We will be touching all these services which are required for you to become a solution architect will be taught, which are required for you to crack the AWS solutions architect. Certification as well will be taught, and then you will be made to go ahead. So if you look at the different kind of services which are there in AWS, there are 100 plus services in AWS that you can learn, but not all the services are supposed to be learned. Only some 20 or 15 to 20 services are the services which are actually used the most, or will actually is used in the IT industry, which you will have to learn and then make your way forward, right? And as and when you start working for the company, if there is any new service which is required to learn, that you can learn as you are working in that company. But these 15 to 20 services, if you learn, you will be eligible to actually apply for any kind of cloud engineer job role which is out there. Having said that, let's start with the compute domain today, and let me show you an example of how you can launch your first server on AWS. So what I'll do is I'll quickly go to my AWS management console. So I'll go to aws.amazon.com. So this is the place, guys, where you can actually sign up for an AWS account. So instead of sign into the console, which I'm getting over here, you will get an option of create an AWS account. So just click on create an AWS account and you will be able to create the AWS account and work with it. Once that is done, once you have signed up, you'll also have to put in a credit card over here. It will charge you $1 if you are outside from India. If you're from India, it will charge you ₹2, right? It will be debited and then it will be credited the next minute back to you just to check if your credit card is working. But don't worry, there is also an option of practicing AWS without getting charged, right? And that is the beauty of AWS. It gives you something called as a free tier, wherein you can practice all you want with AWS and you will not be charged a single penny. And I will show you how you can do that. So first off, once you have created the AWS account, you have entered your credit card, come here, click on sign into this console. So once you sign into the console, you will basically be taken to a dashboard, which will look something like this, right? So here you have all the domains like compute, you have containers, storage, management, cost management, front end web and mobile, AR and VR, application integration, machine learning, media services. These are all the categories of services that AWS basically offers. Now, obviously, like I said, you don't have to learn all of these. You just have to learn 15 to 20 services which are required. And today we will be focusing on the compute domain, and let me show you how you can launch the server that you want, right? So the most used service in AWS is called EC2, which is Elastic Compute Cloud. Click over it, and what you will notice over here is we are in the Mumbai region as of now. Now, these are the different kind of data centers which are present across the globe, right? You can deploy in any data center that you want. Let's say I want to deploy a server in the US. So I can go to, let's say, the Ohio data center. So I'm going to the Ohio data center. And in the Ohio data center, now what I'm going to do is I'm gonna go ahead and deploy a server. So how deploy a server? Just click on running instances, and I'm gonna deploy two servers, guys. The first server that I'm gonna deploy is going to be of Windows. So I'll click on launch instances. And once you click on launch instances, it will basically ask you which operating system do you want to launch. So let's say we go ahead and launch a Windows Server 2019 operating system. So I'll go ahead and select that. Now it will ask me what is the configuration that you want to go ahead and launch. So over here, you can see here are the number of cores of CPU that you can include in your servers. Here is the RAM that you can go ahead and select for your servers, right? So here you will see an option of free tier eligible, which basically means if I launch this server right now, I will not be charged anything because T2.micro is a server which is free for all the people who have signed up new on AWS, and this is free for one whole year, right? But there are some conditions. The conditions are that only 750 hours you will get every month for T2.micro usage, which basically means if you want, you can launch 5 or 10 or 15 T2.micro servers as well. But all of these servers combined, if they cross the 750 mark, 750 hours of mark, then you will start getting charged, right? So if you are within 750 hours of usage, you will not be charged even a single penny, right? So I'm going to launch the T2.micro server. I'm going to click on next. Now it's asking me the network. So since you all are new, you can leave everything default. This will be taught to you in the further session, so you can just leave everything at default. This is the hard disk size. How much GB of space do you want? So default is 30. I can make it 300. I can make it even 3000. It's up to me, right? So I'm going to leave it at 30. I'm going to click on next. Then the tags. This is again an advanced topic. You can skip it. This is the firewall that you can configure for your server. So I'm going to use the default firewall for now. And even you, when you'll be creating your first machine or your first server on your new account, you will have a default firewall. Choose that and click on review and launch. And finally, you will reach the screen where you can review all the settings that you have done. Click on launch. And now here it will ask you the authentication option, how you can go ahead and authenticate to your machine, right? So now the scene over here with AWS is that it doesn't give you the traditional username password approach. What it says is that you will have to choose something called as a private key. You will have to create a private key, and only if you have that private key, you will be able to log into that server, right? So what is the private key? Private key is nothing but a file that AWS will create. You just have to type in the name. So what you can do is click on create a new key pair like this, type in the name and download this key. That's it. So I already have a key which I have downloaded earlier. So let me go ahead and choose that. Let me acknowledge that I already have it on my server, on my system, and I'll click on launch instance. So with this, guys, now the system is getting launched. And what I can do is I can click on the machine and I can check the instant state that the server is currently getting launched right now. So it will take around a minute for this server to be available. I can also name this server anything. So if I go over here, I can type in the name of the server. It's Windows, and you can see the server name is Windows now. And the instance state is running. So this machine is now ready to be used, right? It's in the running state, and now I can go ahead and connect to it. But before I do that, let me also launch one more server, and this time we are going to launch an Ubuntu server. So let's select the operating system to be Ubuntu. The machine size, I will again choose the free tier machine. And for the firewall, I'll again choose the default firewall. Click on review and launch, right? Review all the settings over here, click on launch, select the key pair that you downloaded earlier. So you will get a list over here. Choose the one that you created earlier, acknowledge it, click on launch instances, and that's about it. Again, a new server is being launched. In this case, it's an Ubuntu server. So I'll just name it as Ubuntu. Done. So the server is being launched. So I can go to instances. So I can see Ubuntu is in the pending state. It is being launched. But Windows is ready. So I can go ahead and connect to Windows now. So how can we connect to a Windows machine? This is the public IP address. Public IP address means an address which is available on the internet. Okay, this address can be reached out from the internet. So I can just copy this IP address, and then you can use any remote desktop software. So on Windows, you have a default software which is called Remote Desktop. Just search for that. In Mac, I actually have to download something called as Microsoft Remote Desktop. I will use that. So in this, I will basically be typing in there in the IP address of the machine. So I just click on plus, click on add PC, put in the IP address of the machine, and click on add. It's added. Double click on it, and now it will ask you the username and password of the machine. So any Windows server that you launch in AWS, the username is always going to be administrator, right? So it's going to take like a minute to connect to it. And while it's connecting, let's see how we can get the username and password. So what you'll have to do is you can basically go to actions for this machine and click on get Windows password. So when you click on get Windows password, okay, so that is the reason it's not connecting also. It says please wait at least 4 minutes after launching the instance before trying to connect. All right, so the machine is not ready yet, although it says running over here, but you can see in the status check, it says it's initializing. Okay, so now it says it's initialized. Let's again go here, click on get Windows password. Okay, still not ready. Let's give it that time. So apart from this, let's try to connect to our Linux machine. So in Linux machine also, we will have this IP address, right? So this is the IP address that we will be using to connect to the Linux machine. So how can you connect to a Linux machine? You will have to make use of a protocol called SSH. So the people who are using Mac or the people who are using Linux, you can use your terminal to connect to it. People who are on Windows, you will have to download a software called Putty. So you will have to go to a website called putty.org. Once you visit that website, you will have to click on download Putty over here. And then from here, you can download the installer for the Putty software, or you can download the executable directly as well, right? So you can download putty.exe, the 64-bit version from here. And then you will have to download one more software, which is called puttygen.exe. Why puttygen.exe? Because when you're connecting to a Linux machine, like I said, you do not have the liberty of using just the username and password. You got the key which was given to you by AWS, which you need to authenticate yourself with. So that key that you get is always in the format of a PEM file, right? It's so let's say the key file that you gave was hello, right? So it will download a file called hello.pem. So when you're using the Putty software, the PEM format does not work. So what you have to do is you make use of the PuttyGen software to convert that PEM format into PPK. So how can you do that using PuttyGen? So I will just show you using the screenshots, because PuttyGen is not available for Mac. So I'll not be able to show you uh, the Mac version, but I can show you from here. This is how your PuttyGen will basically look like. So you have to click on load, right? And then you have to select the PEM file. And after you select the PEM file, these two buttons will get activated: save public key and save private key. You will have to click on save private key, and your PPK file will be saved into a location which you select. Once that PPK has been created, the next thing that you have to do is you have to go to putty.exe that you downloaded earlier. And then over here, what you'll have to do is you'll have to put the IP address of the Linux machine. This IP address you will have to put over here in the host name, right? And then you will have to go to SSH over here. In SSH, you will have to go to auth. So let me show you. So once you open SSH, you will have to click on auth. And here in the browse section, you will have to select that PPK file that you created. And then you'll have to click on open. As simple as that. This is for Windows, and for people who are on Mac, it's very simple. Or on even Linux, you will open a terminal which will look something like this, right? And what you have to do is, let me just make it a little bigger for you guys. Yeah. So what you'll have to do is, you will have to go to the folder where you have the PEM file, and in the PEM file, whichever folder has the PEM file, what you'll have to do is you will have to enter this command. So ssh-i means the file that you will want to select, which in our case is the file that we downloaded, which is Mac Ohio. And then I will have to enter the username. So if you're launching an Ubuntu operating system, the username would be Ubuntu at the rate the IP address of the machine and hit enter. So let me just check if this is the IP address. No, this is the IP address. Let me copy it. So this is the IP address of the machine. Hit enter. It'll ask you whether you trust this server. You will hit an yes. And with this, you have successfully logged in into an Ubuntu server. And now, since this is an Ubuntu operating system, you can do anything you want on this, right? So let me do a very cool thing. Let me update this machine. So for using the system, you will have to know the commands for Linux. So when you enroll in the AWS course, we will be teaching you Linux as well. So you don't have to worry about it. But right now I'm updating this machine. And once this machine is updated, what I'll do is I will install a software called Apache 2. And what this will do is this will basically, it will basically download a web server on this machine, and then if I give you guys this IP address of the machine, you will be able to access the web the website which is there on this server. Okay, so if I go to the IP address of this machine and if I give it to you guys, so just check your chat section, guys. You will get an IP address. Just put that IP address on the browser and you should be able to see a web page like this. So let me confirm me if you are able to see this, and if you are, you basically are able to access the website that we have just installed on the AWS server. Let me know if you guys are able to access it. Now let me do one thing, guys. Let me go ahead and let me change the settings in the firewall to only give uh, the access to my own machine. And then in that case, you guys will not be able to access this machine. So what I'll do is I'll edit the rules for this firewall and I will delete every rule which is here. I'll add a rule and I will say that HTTP connection is allowed, or let me say all traffic or all ports are allowed, but they are only allowed on my IP. And when I say my IP, this is the IP address of my MacBook. I will click on save. And now the people who are able to access the website, just try now and let me know if you're able to access it. So if I hit the refresh button here, I will be able to access the website, but I want to know if you guys are able to access it or not. Let me know. Okay, Radha says gateway timeout. Yes, guys. So that's because now the firewall of this server is not allowing you guys to access it. Now, if I again go here and if I go ahead and edit the rules, I'll again change the source to anywhere. Anywhere means anyone can access it. And now if you guys try, you should be able to access it. Let me know. So guys, this is how simple it is to play around with the firewall of a server when you have deployed it on AWS, right? Now, similarly, if I go ahead and now let me go ahead and connect to my Windows machine. So I've showed you how I can connect to my Linux machine. Now I'll go ahead and show you how I can connect to my Windows machine. So this is the IP address of my Windows machine. And let me just try and reconnect now. It's asking me the username. Username will be administrator. It's asking me the password. Now, how can I get the password for this machine is by clicking on actions. clicking on get Windows password. It'll ask me to upload the key pair that it gave me earlier. In my case, it was Mac-Ohio, this one. Decrypt the password, copy it, paste it here, click on continue. And now you will be able to see that a window will open through which I will be able to access the Windows system which is deployed on AWS. So it's working a little slow because we have just given 1 GB of RAM, right? And typically any Windows operating system in the current age is a little reluctant to run on 1 GB RAM. So it's a little slow when we run a Windows machine, but as you saw, the Linux machine was running pretty fast, right? So you can already see the cursor, you can already see the screen for the Windows machine, right? So it's getting launched. So Suresh says even ISMP is allowed. Yes, Suresh. So I've opened each and every port on the server, right? I've allowed all traffic. So he says, can you block ICMP? Yes, I'll do that, Suresh. Give me a moment. So let me do that for you. So as you can see, guys, on my Windows page, I was able to RDP now. All right, so now only HTTP is available, Suresh, you can check it out. So guys, on my Windows page, now as you can see, my Windows is getting initialized. And now I am getting access to this operating system and I can use it the way I want, right? So this is how you can launch a Windows machine on AWS and you can connect to it. So like I said, since it's a 1 GB machine, it's running a little slow. So again, the fact is that you guys are able to connect to this machine, and that was all about it, guys. So that's what the session is, guys. I hope this session was useful to you. So we will be doing more such classes in the future. Cool. All right, guys. So thank you all for joining in. Have a great day ahead, and goodbye.